I call to order the regular Building Board of Appeals meeting for August 17, 2023. Roll call.
Paul Darling,
Here.
Robert Hart, David Arnsdorf,
Here.
Hugh Flack,
Here.
Kevin Cox, Building Official Glenn Dempsey,
Here.
City Plumbing Inspector Ryan Miller,
Here.
Fire Marshal Michael Redmond,
Here.
and myself, Deborah Williams. We have a quorum.
Yeah, thank you. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion for that?
So moved. I approve
Second?
the agenda.
All right, second it. All right, those in favor? Aye?
Aye.
We had no one for public commentary, by the way.
All right, thank you. Approval of minutes from the July 20th, 2023 meeting.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Motion and support. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Passes. Appeals, actions, and show cause hearing. We have one item on the agenda this month. And I'm going to describe what the process is, how the appeal process works. So first, we'll get a report from staff about the process, and then we'll have the applicant come up and present their request for a variance. And the board will discuss and ask the applicant any questions that we may have about the variance. And then we'll have a motion by the board, we'll vote, and then probably next week or so after that, you'll get a written approval from the board secretary about the results of that. Just have a written copy of that, so. So the first item on the agenda is variance from DBA 23004, variance for 2398 for Didion Circle, Unit 10, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And we'll get a staff report.
I'm going to go over the background and follow with that staff report. The buildings at 2369, 2383, 2391, 2397 Viridian Circle are part of the development with multiple buildings of R2 occupancy, and 2380 Viridian Circle Community Center. You can see attachment 1 for the list of addresses, units, and the building permits. These units are in a mixed-use A3 and B occupancy classification as described by the 2015 Michigan Building Code and as indicated on signed sealed plans submitted with the permit applications. Per the 2018 Michigan Plumbing Code, 403.1, see attachment 3, each R2 building must have one automatic closed washer connection per 20 dwelling units. The applicant is requesting relief from the requirement that the 1 per 20 dwelling unit connection per building and proposing the closed washing equipment to be in the community center. The petitioner is appealing based on the provisions of the code not being applicable. Of course, there are the standards for approval. One of 3 standards. The true intent of the code or the rules governing construction have been incorrectly interpreted. The provisions of the code do not apply, and or an equal or better form of construction is proposed. So I'll continue on with staff,
Okay.
the staff recommendation. Staff recommends this application be denied as it does not meet the standards for approval. The code has not been misinterpreted. The provisions of the code do not apply, and locating a washer connection in another building on the property is not equivalent or better than the requirements of the 2018 Michigan Plumbing Code. The code is written to pertain to the building, and the requirements are to be interpreted as such per section 101.2 of the 2015 Michigan Building Code. It is not the intention of the code that per building requirements be met in another building on the property. The applicant was informed that one connection in each unit would satisfy the requirements and be equivalent to or better than what the code requires. It is staff's opinion having to move between buildings is not equivalent to having facilities in the building with your dwelling unit. Furthermore, the distribution of dwelling units that have automatic clothes washer connections and those without seams arbitrary.
Okay, thank you. Next, we can have the applicant come up, sign in, and tell us a little about your appeal.
Hello, thank you for having us. My name is David Esau. I'm an architect with Cornerstone Design, and this is Wendy Carney-Saxon with Arbor.
Hi, everybody.
So, we have done several similar projects like this around Ann Arbor and other communities. Dexter just finished up. All similar scales, or not all of our projects, but several with similar scales. We're trying to keep a residential scale, not a big building with central corridors in general. So there is no common space in the buildings for a common laundry that would be readily accessible to any tenants. So we have always put the laundry in the community center for 4 projects over 20-some years, and nobody has ever hinted that it was a problem. So when we started this project, we did the same thing. And that provision in the code, from what I can find, goes back as far as I could find in old code. It's not like it's changed or new or anything or recently added. And so basically, we have added connections, washer connections in the units in order to get through the permit process, because we needed a letter from Glenn to close on our financing so we can start the construction. We are asking to be able to remove those washer connections and use the connections in the community center, and Wendy will provide some examples of why we have concerns with the washer connections in the unit. We don't have common area to provide washers that aren't in the units, which would be a little more acceptable from a management standpoint. If we did, we would lose a bedroom in a unit, and it would mean that a couple people would remain homeless instead, which is really not what any of us are about, I don't think. And the other thing is, although I can't argue that the city's interpretation of the code is wrong, I think this particular provision is poorly written and needs a lot of elaboration, not just that I wish it would clarify that they could be in another building, but there is nothing requiring dryers. So these tenants could have a washer connection, but no way to dry the clothes. And it's generally just problematic in many ways for us. We believe that what we were providing, which was a central location where they could get all of their laundry done in a relatively short time, meets the needs of the tenants and has met the needs of hundreds of tenants for many years over our other properties.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Wendy Carty-Saxon, Director of Real Estate Development at Avalon Housing. We will own, manage, provide services at the Grove at Viridian. And we're really excited to be able to bring these 50 units of affordable housing online. 30 will be supportive housing for folks coming out of homelessness. 10 of those we're working with Ozone for youth coming out of homelessness. And we're planning, like David said, to close on our financing by the end of the month. Thank you for that. And then start construction in September. So we're just excited about that. And thank you, David, for all of your work on this too. So we understand, obviously, staff didn't recommend approval of our variance request, and we're really hoping the Building Board of Appeals will consider it. We've been doing supportive housing for about 30 years and really do recognize the importance of tenants having access to laundry, particularly supportive housing households that are coming out of homelessness. A lot of folks don't have cars. They can't get the laundromat. So that's why, like David said, our new construction, we've always been sure to, include on-site laundry there. And so it is noted we've got, 4 on-site, not just hookups in the community center, but washers will be providing and 5 dryers that we'll be providing. So really recognize the importance of having that access for folks. The staff report mentioned that the distribution seemed arbitrary of what units had it. So it's really pretty specific. Our 3 and 4 bedroom units, we provide hookups and we provide washing machines and we provide dryers in those units that we own, we maintain, we replace. So just recognizing those bigger size households are just going to have that much more draw on all of those units. The 1 and 2 bedroom units, though, which don't have that same exact full draw, those are the ones that throughout in here at Viridian, we're looking at folks going to the community center. So not having hookups, just using the community center provided ones. So so in addition to learning over the years about the need for laundry, we've also certainly learned problems that we've had when we've just provided hookups to the tenants. The households where housing don't often have the funds to be able to provide a good working washing machine. So that can really lead to leaks and breakages, and then if we're not informed of the leaks, that can cause problems, more maintenance problems within the unit, or if they're stacked units in the downstairs unit, if water comes leaking below, and just sort of a lot of, calling our maintenance staff, hey, can you fix these units? Well, they're not ours. So it really has led to problems in the past, which is why we moved to this, where, here's your laundry, we're providing it, we're handling it. 3 and 4, we're doing the units, but we have limited resources and space, so that's why we're not doing it absolutely everywhere. So that's why both, it's not just we prefer the common laundry, we also have active concerns about just having hookups, how well that would serve the tenants and us compared to having our common on-site laundry. So really hoping you'll grant the variance request. We really do feel that it's an equal or better form than what just the code specifically would have. And that our proposal to have 4 washers and 5 dryers, so I think that's a 1-to-6 ratio with the units that don't have anything in them. Provides more resources than are required by code, and it allows Avalon to affordably provide and maintain housing, better as demonstrated with our, at least through us, with our history of doing it. So just really appreciate your consideration of the variance request.
The one other thing I'd add, the 3 and 4 bedrooms traditionally have been required by MISTA, who is one of our primary funding agencies, to have laundry facilities in them, including not just connections, but the actual laundry facilities. So that's why we started that. The applicability of the MISTA rules has changed over time.
We're not using that source, so we actually
Yeah.
have under that specific requirement.
So, but we don't necessarily know that early on, so we have not varied from starting with that assumption that they would have laundry. So that, it's not really arbitrary at all. The locations seem arbitrary because most of those family units are away from Platte Road and close to the playground at the community center. But there are some that are farther out just to distribute different types of units throughout the community.
Quick question. You've got, I think, 11 units highlighted in yellow, which you say are part of this appeal on your sheet. There's a bunch of units off to the other side that are similar but aren't highlighted. I was curious why they were left out.
I don't have the color version.
Oh,
I can get those.
so I was just wondering why these units were.
These are the family units, the 3
Oh,
and
these-
4 bedrooms.
these are
Everything
all
that-
of them, okay.
Everything that's not highlighted is a 3 and 4 bedroom unit
Okay.
that already has laundry facilities. in
Okay,
it.
okay. I was guessing looking at the footprint, so it must be.
And they're townhouses.
Okay.
Typically, except for a couple of flats to provide accessibility.
All right.
All right, thank you for that, Kevin. Any questions from the board? Additional questions from the board?
So you've already put in the connections, but you'd like to remove them, and the concern primarily being that potential equipment that might be installed by the tenant might not be of the standard where you feel comfortable that it might cause damage or concern?
That's certainly part of it. There'll be water connections in the unit that will, if someone decides to open them, will just dump water on the floor as well. The only place we had space for this was in a storage room. There is not currently a floor drain in there. We could choose to add that, but, and also there's a significant expense to all this. 24 units, and it's about $1,500 a unit for the plumbing work, and some of them need electrical as well.
And I'll just add, right, so we still need to start to build, so it's in our plan, certainly, but if we didn't have to do it, we'd be happy to be able to use those funds elsewhere, since we already have the community center piece budgeted.
So it sounds like the kind of design complies with the Michigan housing, the 3 or 4 bedroom units have, the Virgin or the 1 or 2 bedroom ones.
Yes. And actually, Mr. rules, I think, encourage a common laundry for the rest of them.
And you said that this has occurred already in Ann Arbor as well as other areas?
We have the same situation at Carrot Way, which was done over 20 years ago, at Pauline, which was done
2013.
Yeah, 2013. in which I have found the code for, and it was exactly the same language as it is now. And we just finished one in Dexter under the current code, which was not Ann Arbor, but it was Washtenaw County, and nobody raised a question there. Not, not the engineers I've worked with, not any inspectors or plan reviewers, so.
But they were also ones where you had the washer, dryer in a separate building
Yes.
in the center where people would have to carry their stuff to and
Yes.
from? Any concerns occur, have you heard of any concerns with those?
I haven't. I'll say we do also have a services team that helps out tenants with whatever they need to maintain their housing essentially. So if there are laundry issues, I'm sure they would be able to provide assistance, as far as access.
So the units are two-story units, one or two-story units, if they are?
The townhouses that have laundry in them are mostly two-story townhouses. All of the ones that would be getting the hookups in the units under this, or to have them taken away under this, are stacked flats, so a unit on the ground floor and a separate unit above. We have found it works much better to have completely separate entrances and not force tenants to mix. We have lots of opportunities for them to come together in social events, but forcing them into interaction can be problematic.
So you do have conditions in that, in these buildings where they'd have one would be above the other unit as
Yes.
far as leaking, if they're all slab on grade, it's probably
Yeah.
less of an issue, but.
And for completely other reasons than laundry, it certainly has been an issue with other buildings.
I think the challenge is, out of the three ways we can grant a variance is how do we, that's the challenge, the code doesn't apply, which challenging for us to make that argument, and it's equally or form or better is challenging for us to make, and
Yeah.
the code doesn't incorrectly interpret, it's difficult for us to make. So that's the challenge there.
And also the fact that there's precedent, and we've used that precedent before with Honda, I believe.
Yeah, I think we've done that in the past, it's like, we don't want to set a precedent, we'll grant this, but we don't want to, I guess it's been approved in the past without a variance, I guess it's been not flagged as a variance requiring issue when they've done it in previous buildings. My sense is it seems like the approach you have now is to put them in the units, but not give them any fixtures,
Yeah, if we could afford to give them fixtures, we would love to. It's just, we don't have money for it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can do the rough end without having it, and then
Yeah.
the risk is they would buy one or find one or something and put it in there.
Does the staff have any further comment?
So the code calls for a connection, doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have a washer and dryer. It does ask for the connection,
And that's just for the washer,
for the washer.
nothing to do with the potential dryer.
Does not require it in the code. It does require the water connection, so if the determination is either then or later, they have it there. I can't tell you what's happened in the past. Can't tell you what's happened in other communities. That could be from not realizing or knowing the code. We picked up on this here, and we believe that it's for each building. You may have them in certain units in the building, but if there are units that are missing them, then I believe that the code, the interpretation would be there should be something for those other units too, at least one connection in the building.
So you can put one into the building and then force the rest to go to the community center, because you want them to do anyways.
Well, yeah, I mean, the options we were given by the city, which are perfectly reasonable, was one in a common space
Yeah.
in each building, or one in each unit.
There's no common space.
There's no common
Yeah.
space.
Can I add too, when we're looking at sort of equal or better, I mean, right now, we've got actual units in our community space, that we're planning, when we build, we'll have them in there. I don't want to say if we do this, we'll take those out and we'll save money and try to move money around, you know what I mean, to do these. But if looking at kind of what's equal or better, because under the code, that would be allowed, I would say it sort of feels better to have actual units, high quality, maintained, or at least a consideration, whether you think that might be better, versus just having washers and dryers, versus just having a laundry hookup with no equipment in people's units, just sort of as you're thinking about it, unless I don't want to say, oh, we're going to then take it away, because we'd have to have conversations, and I don't know that we would, but just comparing the two. So.
Is that because this is the plumbing code that requires the fixture, with the mechanical code would require the dryer? Is that how they
No.
would separate, or nowhere in the code requires a dryer if you have a washing machine?
Plumbing code, what they're appealing is the plumbing code,
Yeah.
and that the code cannot require them to put in the connection. I think that's what you were originally appealing
Yeah,
to.
I have not found anything in the mechanical code saying that we need a dryer, and the plumbing
Yeah.
code certainly doesn't say that. The plumbing code doesn't say we need an electrical connection for the washer either, but we have put those in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It just says washer connection, so that seemed like a logical inference, even though it's the wrong code.
Yeah.
I think that's the intention, is to have a connection for,
Device, that would be. yeah.
that there is the ability to hook up a device
Yeah.
in the individual building, and that has all occupants able to use. If they have their own connections, then of course they don't have to use it, but that's what staff has found for an interpretation.
Certainly, if we were aware of this from the start, we could have site planned in common areas for laundry in each building, but we haven't. It would be a 6-month delay in the project to
Yeah.
go back and do that now.
Yeah. What is the travel distance from all these units to the common building? Is that less than 250 feet? You know, what kind of travel do you need to walk?
From the farthest one in building A, it's probably close to 250 feet, I would guess.
And did you find that most people walk, when you go to the facilities, people walk to them, or they drive the car over there? Where do the people usually get from one to the other, you know, where they don't have cars, I guess they walk?
Yeah, usually, we found our 1 and 2 bedroom houses are less likely to have cars than our 3 and 4 bedroom, for what it's worth, so I presume the one person houses tend to be walking over there, yeah.
If you don't include the connection during the initial construction, and say somebody rents one of the units and would like to make a connection, how difficult is it to add the connection after the fact?
I think we would probably, I mean, on a management way, we would probably say we don't have a connection, I'm sorry, you're welcome to use these, unless it was an accessibility, if it was, thank you, a reasonable accommodation, then that would be very different, obviously.
Yeah, it's difficult because the ground floor ones are on a slab, the upper floor ones are above a
Yeah.
fire-rated floor structure, so getting a drain to them, water is fairly easy, but the drain connection would be a challenge.
Right.
If you're gonna do it, it'd be time to do it now when you're, and,
Yeah.
And you say the connections you're putting in, you're just taking a bedroom, basically, and putting.
No, I mean, we had storage rooms in each unit.
Okay.
Another Mr. requirement, and it put the connections in there, so there is space for a washer in there, and access to it.
Does that fill the whole room up, or is it adequate?
It doesn't fill it up, but it would be pretty difficult to get much storage in there along with a washer and access to the washer.
Any questions from the board or staff?
You want me to try?
Go ahead.
Okay. In the case BBA 230004, the appeal of the building official's decision that rework at 2369, 2383, 2391, 2397, and 2380 Veridan Circle be granted relief from Table 403.1 of the 2018 Michigan Plumbing Code, and the Building Board of Appeals reverses the building official's decisions for the reasons that the applicant has proposed an equal or better construction. Stipulations are that there is potential concern for certain future leaks and damage to the units if you install the connections. No requirement to include washers or dryer equipment for those units. So due to precedent in Ann Arbor and the potential benefits to the residents of the units of these 1 and 2 bedroom units, motion is to grant the variance.
Thank you. Any other discussion
Can-
from staff?
Can we put in a clause, if you do that, can we put a clause that says that this is a one-time, this is meant to be one time and not to
Establish precedent?
establish precedent?
We're seeing it in writing, which is good. So I guess we can have,
So this is a friendly amendment to add some verbiage that this appeal is not to be used as a precedent? Okay.
Yeah.
that's what we're adding that now.
Mm-hmm.
So we have,
So if I include, this is considered a one-time variance and not to be used as precedent for future projects? Is that acceptable?
yeah. So we have 3 board members present today, so we need to have at least 2 positive votes for it to pass, the way the motion's granted, or written now. Because we're writing it in the appeal or granted language. Any other discussion on the motion?
No.
We ready for a vote?
Yes.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Aye. So it's like 2 positive votes. Looks like it passes. All right.
Thank you very much. Really
much.
appreciate your consideration.
You want to kind of get your writing thing, I'll give that to Deborah, and see, make sure you can read that before you.
Thank you.
I'll get together with Deborah
Okay,
after
all right.
and make sure she can read it.
Okay, thank you.
That was 2-1, right?
2 to 1, correct.
Okay, thank you.
No other new actions on the agenda. Old business? Any old business? Any update from the variance from last month? Is that still moving along on Broadway or?
I think so, yeah.
Any new business by the board members or staff?
No?
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned at 2:03. Thank you.